Welcome everyone who's joining us this evening. I think we have two very exciting speakers and very exciting topics. We have Steve Lee from the PowerShell team, who will talk about what their plans are, what they're doing in their secret laboratories in regards to PowerShell and OpenSSH. And then we will have Bruno Buyck from Belgium, and he will talk about 10 tips to run PowerShell scripts fast and secure. So I think we have really some very interesting topics. And yeah, just to let you know, so Ryan and I, we co-founded this user group way back in 2019, and we restarted it this February with, and this is the second session of our reincarnation, so to speak. And
post-COVID.
Post-COVID, yeah, exactly. So, and yeah, as you know, you can find us on Meetup and you can find us on Twitter. The recording also of this session, as well as the one from February, which was done by Guy Leach, will be or is available, this one already on the YouTube channel. And as a kind of final remark, so I'm working for ScriptRunner and it's also accidentally a sponsor of the user group. And by the way, if you are looking into like cheat sheets for PowerShell for Teams, Exchange, and security and stuff, so we have a whole bunch of free goodies that you can get from our website. All right, so with this, we have, as we said, we have two interesting topics, and I think we will not waste too much time with the introduction. And anything else from your side, Ryan, we should add at this point?
Nope, I think you covered everything. Good to see that there's quite a few people going to be coming to PSConf in Prague this summer. So definitely look forward to meeting everybody in person that we haven't met yet. And yeah, look forward to seeing what Steve has to say.
Yeah, so without further ado, Steve, the stage is yours. Thanks a lot for being with us, and looking forward to hear what your team is planning to do.
All right, thank you. And first, I apologize I'm not able to make it to PSConf EU this year. I am sending one of my team members, but I'm hoping I can go next year.
Cool.
All right. So let me just start off. For those who don't know me, I'm the engineering manager for PowerShell and the Windows OpenSSH team. And every year I try to put out a blog post just kind of detailing what we're planning on doing for the calendar year. Of course, not everything goes as we plan. New things come in, or we hit roadblocks because things end up being more complicated than we originally assumed. So let me talk about what we originally planned, and maybe I can give some updates on where we are now that we are in April already. So first, one of the big questions I constantly get is like, when is PowerShell 7 going to show up in Windows inbox, right? And I understand the complete customer concerns here. Like for a lot of enterprise customers, they can't use stuff that is not shipped as part of Windows. There's a lot of policies in place, even if it's signed by Microsoft and developed by Microsoft with community help, they can't just deploy PowerShell 7. So one of the things that we are, let me see, is this going to work? Hold on. How do I? Oh, there we go. All right. So one of the things we are, actually, before I talk about the quote unquote solution, let me make sure everyone understands the problem of why we can't just literally ship PowerShell 7 Windows. There's two big problems. One is Windows itself comes with .NET Framework. PowerShell 7 is developed on what used to be known as .NET Core and just called .NET now. And those two things are compatible, but not the same thing. So for PowerShell 7 to work, we need to actually bring .NET with us, because PowerShell 7 won't work with the .NET Framework runtime. Okay, so long version short, that means that you have both .NET Framework because parts of Windows depends on it, and also we have to deploy .NET. So that the size is one of the concerns. Now, there are ways we could potentially reduce some of the size, which means reducing functionality. But the bigger problem is not that. It's really that, and just to be clear, I'm not trying to throw .NET team under the bus. They have legitimate reasons for doing this. But the .NET long-term support lifecycle doesn't match what Windows requires. Windows requires basically 5 + 5 years, and if you're in Azure, sometimes they extend it even more. So it's 10+ years of support. .NET team's long-term support lifecycle right now is up to 3 years. So 3 years is much less than 10 years. So we can't ship something in Windows that cannot be supported. Supported meaning security patches and things like that. So the thing that we're trying to do now is just to make it, okay, how can we make it really easy to deploy it on Windows in a almost inbox experience. So, we currently already deployed to WinGet, and WinGet, I believe in the latest builds of Windows is part of Windows now. And we also deployed to the Windows Store. Of course, Windows Server doesn't have WinGet or the store at this point in time. So you still have to go to like GitHub, get our MSI release and install it that way. So one thing we're developing, and I don't know when this will actually show up, is we're developing a command literally called install-PowerShell. I don't recall if we landed on PowerShell or PowerShell 7, but basically it is a native command, so you don't even need to run it from Windows PowerShell, which also means that you could run it from potentially WinPE if you're in those environments where it doesn't come with Windows PowerShell by default. And basically it's going to install PowerShell 7 for you, right? So that is coming. We have a whole RFC, which is a request for common spec that we had published in our PowerShell RFC repo prior to kind of details the capabilities of that. So we're hoping that that will at least alleviate some of the enterprise concerns about how to deploy this more massively across hundreds or potentially thousands of machines. We do continue. So every year we do have a new release of PowerShell 7. So we're working on PowerShell 7.4. I expect that we hopefully will have a third preview later this week if everything goes well. And oh, here we go. One of the big features, or one of the areas of investment, is really this thing called a feedback provider. So in 7, I want to say 7.2, I don't remember the exact timeline now. We had this thing called predictions, right? Predictors. And I'm going to actually skip to my demo. Let's see if I can make this work. Okay. Hold on. I gotta figure out which screen. I think this is the right screen here. All right. Let me just bring up my terminal. So let's see. If you use like Windows PowerShell, there is this thing called suggestion framework before, and I don't have. I'm running on a MacBook here, so I don't have Windows PowerShell here to show. But prior, if you like, I have some sample scripts. This is my test folder, so these are just things I use to validate bugs and stuff. But if you just try to run like a script, for example, I have this file, right, TLS PS1. If I just try to run it, if experienced user will know this will not work because PowerShell will complain and say you want to be explicit. You got to put the / in front to make sure that you're not running something you're not intending to run. So in Windows PowerShell, you would get a similar experience, not the same thing. We've enhanced it, but if you recall, you would get this kind of thing. And so the big change here is we made the we renamed the suggestion framework to feedback provider, and now it's extensible, right? So the community, PowerShell team members, anyone can actually now add additional ways of providing feedback. And in fact, recently we just took a pull request for the next preview where you could potentially provide feedback based on a comment, based on success, and not just error conditions in other cases. So hopefully you'll see more interesting feedback provider plugins coming onto PowerShell Gallery in the future. So this one is built in. This just does what it does before. But for example, another one might be if you try to run a command that doesn't exist, right? Then it's going to tell you, hey, here based on fuzzy searching, here's some similar commands that maybe is what you intended to run, something like that. But in the future, what I want to hope to do, let's see, we're going to a Git repo here and a PowerShell repo. So if I did something like Git, want to cause this to fail. Okay, so let's say Git checkout doesn't exist, right? So this doesn't exist. Well, maybe this isn't the best example, but I don't want to push anything. So basically, there are examples where if you're using Git, then Git will complain about something, but it'll tell you like, maybe actually I can do it this way. Let me spell checkout. So yeah, so in this case, Git tells me, hey, checkout. I type checkout. It's not valid, but it knows that there's something that is what I intended. So with the feedback provider in the future, we can't do it today. There's other work that we have to do in PowerShell engine itself. But we want to pull out this error message and provide it as something that the feedback provider can act upon. And basically, it can now tell you how to correct some common stuff, right? And some additional stuff that we want to do is, for example, it's very common for people to create like an array, right? And if they add to it, what they may not be aware of, like this will do what you expect, but what people may not be aware of is this is actually reallocating the whole array each time, so it becomes very impactful. So we can definitely, again, use the feedback provider model to inform the user, instead of using an array because you're just appending a bunch of stuff to it, you should really use a list or array list or something like that, which is more memory efficient. So let me go back to the presentation here. And I see a hand up. Do we want to take questions in the middle, or it's up to, I don't know what format you guys want?
Yeah, if it's okay for you. Are there any questions?
Oh, sorry, maybe I disappeared. Okay, let me just continue, go back to where. And by the way, if you put questions in the chat, I'll probably have to disappear after my presentation because I have to go to another meeting. I'll try to get back to responding to any questions targeting to me. So I got through a demo. For 7.4, we are targeting more Linux distros and version support. Our goal is to eventually support all the same ones that .NET itself supports, but it's not a small effort because for anything that we officially support, we need to make sure that we have regular testing to make sure like nothing bad happens so that you can rely on it in production, right? And so whenever we have even like a single test failure across, you know, a complex matrix, that becomes a large number of investigations. So we are focusing on cleaning up our tests, making them less fragile and things like that as we add more support. Native commands. So let me just shortcut this real quick because this could be a long discussion. So I think we've been starting this effort probably since PowerShell 7.1, which is, you know, PowerShell is a shell. So as much as we all love commandlets, commandlets aren't the only thing you can run in PowerShell. You can run native commands, right? You can run, like I showed, Git. You can run, you know, kube control, anything that you would expect to normally run in Bash, CMD, and stuff like that. But we want to make it so that if you run some commands, which I'm calling enhanced commands in PowerShell, you get a better experience, right? Because one of the value propositions of PowerShell is that you don't have to parse text, you can parse structured data objects. So I'm hoping to have maybe like a spec. I don't know if I can do it this month because we have MVP Summit coming up this week, and then we have PowerShell Summit North America coming next week. So probably in May, I'll have some sort of specs published detailing how we expect this to work. But it will require active participation from people developing commands. And then related to that, there are a number of commands that have already adopted JSON as a way to output structured data. So kube control, if you're using Kubernetes or Docker, there is ways providing switches to have it output JSON. And of course, today, if you do that, you can also pipe it to convert from JSON, now you get an object. But we're looking at ways to make it a little bit more user-friendly for people who aren't aware of these options. And again, there is a spec published on the PowerShell RFC repo detailing one approach that we're taking with this. Native binary pipe is just a bug that is a long time coming. For those who are not aware, when you pipe a native command, for example, if you use curl instead of invoke web request to get data and you want to pipe it directly to tar, so these are like more Unix commands than Windows, then .NET by default will try to translate everything coming out of stood out into text. And so if it's binary, then not every combination of binary characters is valid Unicode. So it gets translated and it becomes lossy, right? You're not getting exactly what that zip file ends up being, so it'll fail. So this will fix that scenario where you can actually get actual what the data is coming out of the binary to be what it is. WDAC is the Windows Defender application control. So if you're using Windows Server, and I think this is also available on Windows Client professional machines, which is basically a way to lock down your system. So you don't allow the user to run, you know, unsigned binaries or binaries that are malicious, that are detected and stuff like that. So PowerShell already has a deep integration with WDAC. So this is a case where, you know, PowerShell calls into WDAC API and says, should we run this? And if it says, like for a script, right, like a PS1 file, if it says we don't trust this, today we still allow it to run, but we run it in constrained language mode, which basically means it's kind of like the equivalent of a batch file. So you can't call APIs and stuff like that. And the main challenge here is, like, as we have more internal partners and also customers deploying WDAC to lock down their servers, they're finding it hard to know, like, is their script going to run or not? So we're doing some enhancements to make it that you can do an audit kind of mode where you run your existing scripts and we'll tell you where it's going to fail so you can fix it before you put it into production. All right. I'm going to kind of make sure I respect the time I have available and not go too deep into DSC v3. So I'll shortcut this and say, actually, let me try to remember what I have on here. Okay, so I'll talk about these points at a high level. So we are doing a bunch of investments. Let me go back real quick in DSC v3. So for those of you who don't know DSC, this is desire state configuration. This is basically allowing you to do configuration as code as a declarative model. So rather than writing like a complex PowerShell script and doing error handling and all this stuff, and then you end up with like a partially configured application or system, DSC with a bunch of resources will allow you to have better reporting and better predictability of making sure you have the right configuration for the target system or systems. So this is a reinvestment in this, and I do have a dedicated session on this topic at PowerShell Summit. And as far as I know, I think those get recorded and get public later. I don't know for sure, but we will have more detailed content on this, as well as the repo being open source, probably, my guess is probably like June-ish timeframe. But at a high level, unlike the existing DSC, which is more focused on Windows, we are making it cross-platform, so you can use the same way to configure Windows and Linux and macOS machines. LCM, which is old local configuration manager, as a way to deploy configurations, is something we're moving away from. Instead of competing with a lot of popular products like Puppet, Chef, Azure Machine Config, and stuff like that, you can use any popular agent that you want, and most of them already integrate with DSC in some fashion, so there's be additional integration they would have. We want to also separate DSC itself from PowerShell package. That way DSC can evolve independently of PowerShell. That way, if you want to update to the latest DSC, but you want to stay on an older version of a long-term service supported PowerShell 7, that's perfectly fine. MOF, which is the managed object format, which came from sim/WMI, did not take the industry by storm. So we're kind of moving away from that, moving towards more what the industry is using, which is JSON, right? So this will make it so that you can use existing JSON tools. There's a lot of those. You don't have to know what MOF is. And the big thing here is really the last point, which is as much as we love PowerShell, if we want it to evolve. Sorry, someone. Oh, okay. So the big thing on the last point here is, like, as much as we love PowerShell and we will continue to support PowerShell as a way to author DC resources, in order for us to grow the DC community and get more resources and get more participation, we need to support other languages, meaning that if you're a business that has invested in Python and you have not learned PowerShell, then it's going to be much easier for you to write your resources in Python versus in PowerShell or in Rust or C++ or whatever the case may be. So again, more information about this will be coming out in the coming weeks/months. So for the SSH side, we are working towards updating the release that we ship in Windows to 9.2. It's going to be 9.2.2. We've taken some additional fixes. I don't have a promise of when it shows up, but basically Windows releases are on like a moving train, and we check in, and then whenever Windows decides to deploy it is when customers will get it. But we do have beta releases that you can test for us on our GitHub repo before we check those into Windows. As part of the DCV3 effort, we are also building this SSHD config DC resource. That way you can actually, again, have a declarative model to configure SSHD instead of opening up the text file directly and trying to modify that. And if you haven't heard of Shark, which is another effort that my team did, this is SSH for Arc. So Arc is part of an Azure offering so that you can bring on-premise servers not into the cloud, but you can connect them to Azure. So they stay on premise as you have them today. But basically, by connecting to Azure, you can use any of the Azure offerings like update management, policies, blah, 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 as though your physical machines were virtual machines. All right. And so what Shark does is now enables you to do SSH remoting from, let's say you're at Starbucks or whatever your favorite coffee shop is, and you can now remote from your laptop through Azure into your on-prem device without opening public-facing ports, and you also get the value add of having Azure multi-factor auth so that it's more secure. So we're taking that to hopefully general availability sometime in the next couple months. All right, on the gallery side, let me just zoom through. Whoops. Okay, so these are just obviously, like, a lot of the part of the team right now is actually just the last point, which is general reliability improvements. And these are things you don't necessarily see, hopefully, because you haven't been impacted by these things. But we do continue to address, because the gallery, as was written before, and again, I'm not trying to throw the original engineers who worked on this, who are not on my team anymore, but when they designed it, they didn't expect the amount of usage that we have today. So the scale of it is not satisfying the needs of the world today. So we continue to do changes, sometimes patching, sometimes rewrites of parts of it. But from a feature perspective, we are looking at exposing REST APIs for publishing and unlisting. So you don't actually have to go to the website to do this. That way you could actually publish a package unlisted by default, because today it will be listed by default, and do your own testing and then list it when you're happy with it. So that's something we want to do. So ACR is the Azure Container Registry. So, one of the big challenges we have is the gallery today runs off of basically a SQL Server instance with a CDN front end. So that doesn't guarantee like any reasonable number of nines for someone using this in production for an enterprise. So Azure Container Registry has a much higher level of reliability. So we're working with them to see, can we actually host PowerShell artifacts in an ACR instance so you can get that reliability and manage it yourself. So again, we'll have more information about this when the time is ready. And along with PowerShell Gallery, and this has been a very long project, much longer than we expected due to various reasons. But I don't think it's gonna, I don't recall if it got checked in for this next preview, but it should be showing up in a feature preview of 7.4. We want to get 3.0 complete, general availability in the next few months. We will continue working on this post 3.0. So there are a bunch of other features in 3.1 that we plan for. For example, one of the big asks is to do concurrent installations. So AZ PowerShell is one of the bigger modules along with AWS's module. And so if you're doing a sequential install, it's a very large module. It takes a long time. So one of the things we can do in 3.1, and I know some community members have examples how this can work, is that we want to be able to say, hey, we already generate the dependency graph. We know like you want these 10 modules. We know which ones to depend on what ones, and we know which ones are safe to start installing it at the same time in parallel. So it will actually go much faster, along with some other features that we have planned for 3.1. Oh, here we go. The other one is NuGet.org dependencies. So we also know that module authors today, because you cannot declare dependency on an assembly on NuGet.org, you basically have to package it up yourself, and then every time that dependency gets updated, you have to now update your module. So we want to kind of streamline that by you can just directly declare dependency on NuGet.org assembly if you're using that for your module. And so those are independent, and we can update one versus the other. Also have a feedback provider plan for PowerShellGet 3, meaning that if you run a commandlet that doesn't already exist on your system, we can inform you what module to install to get that commandlet. VSCode is our recommended developer experience and also admin experience. So if you're still using ISE, you should probably stop. Although if you have to, then continue. So there's a whole bunch of improvements in terms of performance and also just bug fixes that we continuously invest in. Syntax highlighting is one of the things that we are looking at to improve performance there. Syncing debugger breakpoints between what you're using in the editor versus what you're using like in the terminal. And also, again, bringing back WDAC. So this, again, the Windows Defender application control. These are like for more secure environments. And we have internal partners at Microsoft and Azure that use WDAC environments on like their laptop. But they want to be able to use VS Code to write their PowerShell scripts. And so we're making improvements there so they can do that reliably, safely. All right, I think that's my last slide. So there are some other modules. This is actually maybe a little bit old now. So PSReadLine, I'll start from the bottom. PSReadLine v2.3 beta 0 was released, I think, maybe 2 months ago, maybe last month, don't recall now. And that was some enhancements to predictions. So if you ever use like the list view mode for predictions, and you can toggle that, you get, as it's kind of predicting what you want either from history or from a plugin like Azure PowerShell, it can actually show, I think, up to 10. But now the enhancements is that you can page through more if you don't find the thing that you need, or you can actually page through different plugins and stuff like that. Going to Crescendo 1.1, which is above. This is a project where, again, going back to like native commands, right? Like there's a bunch of popular native commands. There are teams in the past, like for example, Git. There used to be a project that kind of wrapped that command with commandlets. One of the challenges is, well, if you have two concurrent projects and one becomes big and one becomes big as well, it's a lot of work. So Crescendo's intent is really to kind of streamline some of that, make it easy, make it more, again, declarative. So this is actually a framework or a tool, it's a module for module authors who want to wrap a native command and expose it as commandlets. So 1.1 is based on a lot of community feedback. So we appreciate that, and we'll continue to invest in this as long as there's feedback that needs to be addressed. PlatyPS 2.0 on the very top one is really it's a PowerShell module that's published to the PowerShell Gallery. This is a module for what our internal Microsoft teams use to convert their Markdown help. So help is authored by default in Markdown, and then we have to generate it into an updatable help form, which is called MAML. And I can't exactly remember what MAML stands for, but it's a markup language used by it's an XML thing. So anyways, PlatyPS will convert that into the updatable help that gets published so that when you do update help, it can actually understand the syntax of that. So we've been working on this new 2.0 version for a while to help so basically all the teams at Microsoft that publish help end up using PlatyPS as the way they publish their help. But this may be also useful for community module authors as well. So they can just author their help content in Markdown and also generate the equivalent updatable help for their own modules. And I think that is the end. So again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put in the chat. I'm more than happy to follow up on it later in the day as I can get to it.
Yeah, cool. Thanks a lot. So do you still have time to take some questions if there are
Of
questions?
course, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, also, I will take questions beyond just what I presented as well.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I think everybody is able to unmute if you want. So if you have any question for Steve, please.
Yes, this is one of my cats on my lap, by the way.
Yeah, we just talked about this earlier, right? So it's the cat might stay when you have to leave for the other meetings here. Yeah. I would have just a general question as everyone talks about OpenAI at the moment and stuff.
Sure.
Do you see anything happening in this regards with you guys integrating something into PowerShell as we know that Doug he created his PowerShell AI module, you know, to talk to ChatGPT, and I find this pretty impressive actually. The results vary from the data, of course, but is there anything that you can talk about that maybe that something also comes from your team in this direction?
Absolutely. I mean, it should be no surprise that basically every team across Microsoft is looking at OpenAI, right? Microsoft has a big relationship with OpenAI itself. We are looking at this. I don't have anything to announce or show right now. And I think Doug's work on PowerShell AI has been very impressive. Let me see, how do I want to put this? There will be more information coming. Okay. And you'll be hearing us talking about this thing called Intelligent Shell in the future, in the near future, I think. And we'll be able to show maybe some experimental work that we have on how we think AI can actually integrate more naturally within PowerShell. But we do recognize there's a lot of value here where if you just play with Doug's example or some other, there's like I did a Codex one a while back as well. Like the way that OpenAI has been trained, it has picked up a lot of PowerShell examples that are on GitHub and other places, right? So it knows PowerShell to as much as it knows anything really. So it's pretty interesting that you can ask it some interesting questions, and not always going to get it right. And this is some of the challenges we're trying to work through. For example, like and even with my Codex one, which uses an older model from OpenAI, if I were to ask it to on my MacBook, like how do I get the OS version, then it's going to find that people were using WMI to get this on Windows, and guess what? WMI doesn't exist on Mac, so those commandlets won't work, right? So there's some work that needs to be done so that whatever it tells you, it will work in your environment, whether it's Windows or otherwise, right? Because it may be relying on APIs that don't exist on your version of Windows or commandlets or whatever the case may be. But I think there's a bright future, but there's a bunch of unknowns.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, thanks a lot. So I'm really excited and seeing what we'll see there. I started to play around with it quite a while ago, and I don't know if some people from the audience also did. It's the results in general for ChatGPT. It varies I think I would say for things like modules out there that are around for years, the results are good. For the more newer ones, like the AC module, sometimes it's just not, well, I think the data is, because it's from 2021 latest. So I think this is, it relates to that, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely, one of the things that we're also, I'll just say we're investigating, right? Is like ChatGPT and the large language models are very interesting, but they're very general as well. And like, is there opportunity to train PowerShell or DevOps specific models so you can get more specific results? Could be interesting.
Okay, yeah. So it's as always, exciting times. So we'll see what happens. Yeah. So I think last chance for the audience. Do you have any questions at this point? Otherwise, I also put your Twitter handle in the chat. So if people are not already following you. They should, for sure.
Yes.
And
well, I was just gonna say, like, if you if you tweet at me, I tend to try to answer most questions. But please don't just ask me general PowerShell help questions. Like, that's much better suited for like the Discord channel or PowerShell org or any other place.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so if there are no other questions, I would say thanks a lot, Steve, for this insights. This has been really cool.
Definitely. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And it's really great to see you guys, running this user group. And I hope we see more of these pop up. So, and again, I apologize. I have to go because I'm actually supposed to be at a PowerShell working group meeting right now, helping those guys triage some of the issues that we have in the repo. So thank you very much.
Okay. Again, Steve, take care. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Thanks.
All right. So the question is, should we continue directly, or should we make a 5-minute bio break before we continue? Are you all ready to continue? Then we do. Okay, then. All right. Okay, so now next up is Bruno.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Bruno. Thanks for joining us. So you want to tell us a little bit about tips and tricks to run PowerShell fast and secure, right?
Yes.
Cool.
A few weeks ago, you called me, Heiko, and you asked me, is it possible to give a bit of information about PowerShell and some things you have seen at customers? So I went through my materials, my mails, my, let's say, worst cases, best cases as customers, and I made a small selection of business cases and just a bit of tips and tricks and also some funny stuff in it. But first of all, I don't think anybody knows me. My name is Bruno Buyck. I live in Belgium, 37 years old. I'm the owner of Troubleshooter BV, which is specialized in PowerShell consulting. And also I'm a certified trainer for Microsoft, so I give PowerShell courses. If I look at my normal business year, I'm scripting 220 days a year. I'm giving 20 days course. So that's, let's say I'm working more with PowerShell than I'm teaching PowerShell. Therefore, my courses are based on just practical experiences and not especially the theoretical side. If you want to reach me, you can send me an email at bruno@powershell.whatthefuck. WTF is a top-level domain, which is fun to have. And you can also reach me by LinkedIn. What will we cover today? First of all, some general stuff, preference variables, a bit debugging in the console, a bit about parameter validation, then some performance tuning tips. We will talk about avoid using pipelines, hash tables for lookups, loops, and then we'll jump into security, which is a hot topic for everyone, I guess. And we will see how you can conceptual work with secrets, you can identify scripts with secrets and what you should do with them. Then I will show how to protect your scripts by signing or obfuscating them and the way back, and also a few tips and tricks on logging your output and using the built-in logging options in your systems. So the first topic, preference variables. A few years ago, a customer called me. Yes, my colleague has copied some script from the internet. He executed it, and now we are missing a few users in Active Directory. Can you investigate what went wrong? The guy sent me the script. Okay, it looked good, but nothing weird. And I asked to him, yes, can you send me your PowerShell profile? And in the profile, some preference variables were adapted, which had, let's say, painful consequences for that guy. Preference variables. These are variables which can be used to customize the behavior of PowerShell. Changing them may have severe impact. I've just put a screenshot of an article on the right side, which shows that a man accidentally has deleted his company by one line of code. if you do get AD user, remove or delete AD user min confirm false, then you will delete all users. That's not good. So we want to protect ourselves and the scripts for making mistakes. The first variable I want to discuss about is confirm preference. This means if you want to delete something, you are asked, are you sure you want to delete, yes or no? Changing this variable to none is not done. It was done at the customer side. To make it quick and dirty, they don't like to continue or to confirm, thus they automatically confirm everything, which is not a good idea. I'll always recommend, if you are just running the scripts in production and you're sure they are working, use the default, which is high. If you're testing your scripts, use the low preference, which means if you put it on low, for every action which is done on your computer, you have to approve it, just to test your scripts and to be sure you are not doing nothing wrong. Afterwards, after the confirm preference, you have also the what if preference. I don't know if everyone knows that the major amount of commandlets have a what if parameter, and this switch on the simulation mode of the commandlet. It will just simulate the action, but won't apply it to the operating system. You can overrule this preference in your profile of on top of a script and say for every commandlet which is executed and has the what if preference, just execute it in simulation mode. This would also prevent the deletion of the user accounts in the case of that customer. And then the guy should see that he was targeting the wrong OU and that his user account and one of his colleagues was deleted instead of the one of the users. So if you look at the code example, you have the what if preference set to true. If we are stopping the spooler service, it says, thank you very much for doing that, but I'm doing nothing. I'm just performing the operation, but won't stop it. If you change the what if preference to false, then quite simple, it will stop the service without confirmation. The next one, error action preference. When something goes wrong, mainly it goes terribly wrong, but you can specify how PowerShell should react to an error which is thrown in your scripts. The default is continue, which displays the error but won't and will continue the scripts. For troubleshooting purposes, perhaps it's nice to use inquire, which means that the error will be displayed and you will have the possibility to choose if you want to continue with the script or not. If you are using scripts in production, I would advise to use stop. Once an error occurs, please stop the script, don't execute it anymore. And the one which is not done is silently continue. For the guys who used VB script a few years ago, it's the same as on error resume next. Just ignore everything and go on. If we are turning this into production, what we will see the first example. You have the error action silently continue. I have two commandlets, one divide by 0, which will throw automatically an error, and the second one is just to put something on the screen. So in the first option, silently continue, will just execute 1 divided by 0, won't display the error, and will write something on the screen. The continue, the default action, will just write the exception on the screen and will write the text. The error action stop will just write the error and will not execute the rest of the script. And the inquire one will give me a notification, Houston, we have a problem, there's an error, and what do you want to do with the script? Continue, break, suspend, and so on. So this were 3 preference variables which you can use to secure yourself or protect yourself from mistakes. Any questions about this at this moment?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. let's continue to the next part. Debugging scripts in the console.
Hey, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, go back to the previous screen if you can, please.
Yeah.
So the last error, it's actually showing the attempted to divide by 0. Is it just the error message is being popped out, or there's no parent contains error exception, or why is it like not in red and?
It's why you. The reason why is you're using the inquire mode. It shows you the error message, and then it will give you the option. So it's not displayed in red. It's something which was done by Microsoft. Okay, so it's just the console output which isn't in red, but here you have the option. You can continue, silently continue. You can choose what to do with your script, which is for troubleshooting purposes, I would say, is a must-have.
Sounds good. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions at the moment? Okay. Debugging scripts. A customer called me. Yes, I have a Linux machine with PowerShell core on it, and I have a script which doesn't run as I want, but I cannot install anything on the machine, so I cannot debug the scripts. I say, I beg your pardon? Yes, you can debug your scripts. Yes, can you come over and show me some tips and tricks? Okay, first of all, we have a few options to debug the scripts. The first option is use the command that set psdebug. This will produce a lot of outputs on your scripts. If you're using the trace parameter, so this one, and you set it to 2, it will be throwing out a bunch of information on every variable, every loop, which can be nice. Another nice option is step. This means your script will be executed line by line, and you have to approve the moment the line was executed. If we take this into an example, below we have the trace 2, and if I do a simple write host, put something on the screen, you will see that there is a lot of information shown. If we are doing it by the step mode, then I've took 2 commandlets, the write host not okay and the write host welcome. You will see that he will request 2 times confirmation, the first time for the first write host not okay and the second time for the write host welcome. So you can just, let's say, execute your script line by line. This is nice for a short script, but if you have a script of 15,000 lines, then I should say good luck with pressing the enter key. There are some other things you can do with that. You have the PS set breakpoints. Just like in the editor, you can put a breakpoint in your scripts on a commandlet on a variable, and when you execute your script, the execution will stop, and you can troubleshoot everything. I have here 2 examples. The first breakpoint will just break in the moment a command or function is called starts with remove. And the second breakpoint will kick in the moment my variable PS for fun is something is reading it or something is writing it. So if we translate that to production, then I made my breakpoint, just set the PS breakpoint, quite simple, PS for fun mode read write. And then I have debug possibilities. You see my session is in debug mode, and I can display all the variables, or just like in a default editor, I can jump, step into it, continue, quit, detach, or just display the call stack. This is all done command line. Okay, good. This is the default output. But sometimes it's nice and it's almost mandatory to provide some extra information to your scripts. By example, write verbose. This does the same as write host, except you can turn it off or on with the verbose preference, which means if you can add diagnostic outputs to your script, by example, start of the script, this This morning, end of the script, I've written 2 files and so on. You can provide diagnostic output and you can hide it. A simple example. If I would execute my script normally, I should only see the ctemp, but I've added 2 verbose messages on top and on the bottom. And my preference is set to continue, so it will show on the screen. Keep in mind, if you add too much verbose information, it will make a mess of your session. Therefore, I've made a little present for you, which is a sample function, and you override the right verbose and you show the verbose message in a grid view, which means that your default console is clean and all the notifications of your right verbose are offloaded to a separate window, which is clean and nice for troubleshooting or just debugging your scripts. I will publish the function on GitHub at the end of the week, or if you want it earlier, you can send me an email. That is just for debugging some information and some scripts, command line and PowerShell. Any questions about these at this moment?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, good. Parameter validation, one of my favorites. I've got a call from a customer, and the guy has followed the course, has followed one of my courses. Yes, I've written a function. Oh, congratulations. But I did forget some stuff, and my colleagues are abusing it, and it throws errors all the time. So I said, please send me over the code. I looked in it and said, yeah, it's normal. You are having a few problems over there. Did you ever heard about parameter validation? Yes, in your course, but it's too far away. Okay. I said, keep in mind, parameters are the bells and whistles of your functional commandlets. You can customize your commands with it. Often they are misunderstood and never trust the user who will fill in the value of the parameter. Never trust it. Use always a kind of validation. On the level of parameter validation, we have different options. First of all is the validate length. We can validate the length of a string or of characters. The moment the function is executed, he will first check the variables and will throw an error if they are not conform the requirements. That's the first one. Validate length. Validate pattern, we can use a regular expression just to check if the input matches our expectations, which is also nice. Validate range. It can specify a minimum and maximum value for a parameter, which is also nice. Validate script, my personal favorite. You can use a Scriptblock or write your own script to validate your parameter. Or a validate set, you can define a predefined number of values for that parameter. I've thrown them all into a small example just to show you what is possible with parameter validation. The first one is a string variable, which is called mobile phone, and we want to validate that it's correctly in the right format, which is, it starts with a plus sign, then we are having a decimal from 1 to 9 one times, and then we are having 0 to 9 multiple times, at least 3 times, maximum 14 times by example. So if I give here a value with a letter B or something else, it will throw an error. If I'm giving a number plus 32, it's not 3 characters or not 4 characters, it will throw also an error. The following, I have to define a folder path to export, by example, a list of CSV files. My colleague is a good guy. He is but Monday morning he had a bad weekend and he is giving in false, a path which does not exist. If I don't test the path, good luck, but the function will crash and will do some stupid things. We can test the path with the validate script. So if this folder path, which is represented by the $_ exists, then okay, the script will be executed. If the path does not exist, then the script will throw an error. It won't execute. Another one is the validate set parameter. This one is used a lot. By example, I want to deploy a virtual machine, and I want to outsource that task to a colleague developer. And I know that guy, if I don't validate the set, I will end up with machines with 512 gigabytes RAM. So we want to reduce the amount of RAM, so we give him the option to use 8 gigabytes, 16 or 32. So the value memory has to be one of the 3 options, otherwise it will produce an error and the script of the function won't be executed. The following 2 parameters are just, let's say, simple ones. They validate the length of a string, and here we validate a range of numbers. So my volume has to be between -1 and 10, and my file name has to be at least 5 characters and maximum 15 characters. With parameter validation, you can protect your functions and your scripts and your variables from user stupidity. Please use them as much as you can. Also look into the validate script. This one you can put no matter what in there. If the folder path, by example, is an Active Directory user, you can check if the user exists before the function content is executed, which is really nice and is a must-have. Any questions about these, about parameter validation at this moment?
No questions. I put into the chat the link to the article that you referred to in your slide.
Yes.
So people can take a look at it.
Yes, that's an article I've written for Scriptrunner, and there one nice thing of Scriptrunner is that it will automatically use the validation while giving in the value in the interface. That's really nice. So if you open Scriptrunner and you look into a form and you want to fill in a variable, then automatically is checked before you click the submit button, which is really nice.
Yeah, and just Martin commented here, validate script is very cool. Yeah, that's true.
That's instead very cool. It saves a lot of time and a lot of issues at customers. So if there are no questions, I will continue to a bit performance tuning at this moment. I received a call from a customer. It was 2 years ago. There was a third party which delivered as a script. The script has to run every hour, and it runs for 15 minutes, which is a bit long and a bit slow. Can you please have a look at the script? Say, okay, 15 minutes for one script? Should be, that's really a lot. So first I took the script, I analyzed it, printed it out. It was a script of 800 lines, same. And when looking at the script, I've seen that the guy didn't knew a lot about performance tuning. He made some, let's say, basic mistakes when tuning or tweaking scripts. The first of all is avoid pipelines when it's possible. Pipelining. What is pipelining? Quite simple, you're passing the result of a preceding command to the next command. Practical, you're playing and wasting memory. If you're doing pipelining on purpose multiple times in a loop, then you are playing with memory and wasting memory. There are some ways around for certain things. Let me show you a few. In that script, that guy had to suppress outputs. he was building a collection of 40,000 items, and every time he's added something to the collection, a value was displayed on the screen, and that output he popped it to out null. So for a quiet demo, I just used a new variable with the goods, and I've executed 10,000 times the variable pipe to out null. Just don't show it to the screen, remove it. I've executed 10 times, and then I've calculated the minimum, maximum, and average times. The times are in milliseconds. They can be measured with measure command, or we can also using Timus and PowerShell. That's another way, but I used for this demo measure command, which isn't 100% accurate, but gives you an incorrect ID. So the first piece of script, the left side, just piping my GUID to out null will result in an execution time of 621 milliseconds, which is a lot, you could say, but is not dramatically. Okay, if I assign this variable, the output, to another variable, null, which doesn't exist, this means I avoid piping, moving the block of memory, and this results in an execution time of 123 milliseconds, which is 5 times faster. Okay, if we're doing that 1 million times, 2 million times, and so on, you will have a lot of time reduction. That's the first one. Second one, measure object versus count. Objects have properties and methods. Please look at them. You can find them with the get member commandlet. In that script, that guy used in a loop count through measure objects, which means this data fields will be piped into measure objects, and then we will extract the property count and display it on the screen. If we are executing this way, this gives me an execution time of 65 milliseconds. If I use the built-in property from the object, it gives me 0.1 milliseconds. Logically, it's already there. You don't have to calculate it. So I replaced in that script, first of all, the out null versus null, which saved me around 1 minute. Then this one saved me 30 seconds. The next one is hash tables, and this one saved me 10 minutes. So what is a hash table? A hash table, also known as a dictionary of a associative array, is a structure that you can store data with in it. Let's say it begins at the bottom with @ sign. You have
Bruno?
Yes.
Sorry. We have a question in the chat. You want to take it?
Yes.
I have seen that if there are no elements, then using $datafield.count shows null instead of 0. Any workaround on that?
So if you don't have any values in the data field, that's the question. So if you don't have any values in the data field, and you are doing the count, it won't give a value. That's the question.
Yeah, and I think he's adding something. Yes. So yes, that's the question. Yeah.
Quite simple. First, I test my variable. If the variable is null, I won't do anything. I always test my variables before I'm doing an action on it. So it's correct. Right. If there is no data in the data field, then the count will be 0. If there is no data in the data field and we do a measure object, the count will be null. That's true. That's correct. But therefore, I'll always test my variables when I'm using or when I'm doing actions on it. Is the workaround directly from the object? No.
Okay, so I have to use the measure object.count for that.
Yes, or you test your variable. Yes.
Yeah. So the example that I'm using is if I have a CSV file which gets auto-generated with a list of users every half an hour, and I want to check how many users are there, sometimes it's empty. So I do not get any information about it. So I was having that issue, so I started using measure object.count.
Yes, that's also an object. That's also a possibility. But if you read your CSV file, why don't check if it's not null and then throw the error?
Okay, I can check that.
Yes, want if you do a count of 0, it's perhaps it's more intelligent to throw an error and to give you a notification there's something wrong with the CSV. I won't continue the script. Here it stops.
Okay.
Just thinking out loud, out of the box. I'm always testing.
I'll try that.
I'm always testing my variables before I use them. I never trust anything. Trust is good. Checking everything's up is better.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Any more questions at this moment?
I don't have anything. Thanks.
Okay. Everyone ready for the hash tables?
Let's do it.
Okay, good. So the customer called me. Script is takes too long to execute, and in the script I've seen that the guy was using a where object to just filter data or get one element from a PowerShell object. I thought to myself, why not use hash tables? Hash tables are dictionaries or associative arrays, and the data is stored with key pairs, which means if you look at our example on the bottom, we have hash tables. Then Bruno is 37, Ella is 35. If I want to just get the age of Bruno, I just using the variable hash table dot Bruno or use square brackets. For our example, I just used an API which is available on the internet. It just gave me a list of countries with some properties like the name, the CCA2 is a country code, and we have the top level domain. There are around 250 entries in countries, so that's a small object, but just to show how we can work on the performance. Normally, some people, or most people, if they want to filter something, they want to have only the record with CCA2 equals B, Belgium. They use this kind of command line. Countries pipe where object, then the country code equals Belgium. If you execute this 100 times, then it will give you an average of around 6 milliseconds. Which is not bad, but not terrible. If you look into the countries, then you can see there is a where method. So we can directly from the objects avoid the pipeline and just use the where to filter the value, which means that we can reduce the execution time of the where from 6 milliseconds to 2.3 milliseconds, which is a bit faster. But if we are doing this 10,000 times, it will be still slow. Then I will transform my objects into a hash table. The hash table is hash table countries. I will scroll through every country and just add the country codes as, let's say, a primary key, and the object country as the value. Constructing this hash table takes me 1.31 milliseconds. If I want to look up something from the hash table, I just use the variable name dot the lookup value be, and the average execution time is 0.07 milliseconds, which is quite fast. Now let's do a quick calculation. I want to execute 100 times a search on an object. Let's say it takes 2.2 milliseconds. Multiplied by 100 is 226 milliseconds. I want to do this with a hash table. I generate a hash table once, which is 1.3, and I do 200 times the lookup. So let's say it's 14. We are arriving, if I'm good, at 15 milliseconds instead of 226, which is a big difference, I guess. So if you can, please use hash tables. They are a big win in performance. Another one, loops are always fun. And my experience with loops is, please, in every case, simulate them, measure them, and look what is best for you.
Bruno?
And yes.
Sorry, we have another question in the chat.
Okay. Okay. Good help.
Did you measure a execution time difference between the access methods by key versus getter?
So could you execute I will have my chat open. Yes, over here, where it is. Measure execution time difference between access methods by keys versus getter. I see we've got already an answer from
Justin.
From
yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Hello, Justin, by the way.
Yeah. He's typing.
Hello, how are you guys?
Awesome.
Fine.
Okay, so the assumption would be there's no difference because it's the same.
No. I'm not quite sure if it's really correct, but I check out later.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
No problems. So, in loops, I just simulate every time loops and every cases just to measure the performance, because it can be a bit tricky. But in the script from that customer, there were a lot of for each loops and always, and it was a pain in the ass just to get everything a bit performant. There were two types of loops in that script. There's the for loop, which is a loop which executes something at predefined times, and then a for each which scrolls through the object, which is not bad at all. Above was the first loop I saw in the script, same structure, which means it's a waste of using the pipeline. You will generate numbers from 1 through 100,000. Then you will do a manipulation on it, and then it's done. If we look at the performance of this piece of code, it takes me 1.472 seconds, which is slow. Then I said, okay, let's transform this into a for loop. A for loop which starts at 1 and ends at 10,001, and we will just add something to the variable. Executing this results into an average of 422 milliseconds, which is already a big difference. If we transform this into a for each with the same parameters, is 311.44. You can also use and go even further using anonymous script blocks, but I didn't do that for the customer. They were out of budget. But you can even speed it up much faster with an anonymous script block. But that's how I reduced the execution time from 15 minutes to about 3 minutes for one script, which was not bad at all. It costed me about 4 hours to transform the script into something performant. Any questions about performance tuning at this moment?
I don't think so. No.
Then one of my favorites, I've seen them almost at every customer, and I almost started to cry sometimes. Working with secrets. Why is it important? I guess everyone knows the Uber hack of last year. A young guy was able to use to build up a VPN connection to Uber, and he went to the internet and found some scripts with credentials in it, and from there he could use to breach AWS and the G Suite accounts of Uber. After that, a lot of customers called me, how can we prevent this type of hacks? First of all, there was a PSSecretScanner module written by Bjorn Sundling, which scans your PowerShell scripts, config files, and so on. It's really nice. Just let it run, and it will give you a script of things you have to mitigate, you have to remediate, and so on. Doesn't cost anything. Just let it run, and you could be amazed what it will find in your network code and so on. Once you have the list from the secret scanner, then please use key vaults. So don't define secrets in config files, plain text, even encrypted or obfuscated, and a registry. And keep in mind that the automation PS credential can be reversed. If you have look at our best friend Google, you will find it in 2 minutes how to reverse the PS credential, how to get the password in plain text. Watch out. So for your scripts, please do use at least a key vault, Windows key vault, Azure key vault, AWS key management system, or other password managers. There's one I know in depth, and this is CyberArk. And CyberArk is able and works with an agent to match the credentials to the signature of a script. By example, if I'm using my script, which is named test.ps1, and I ask CyberArk for credential, and my colleague copies the script, change 2 lines, and execute it, it won't give me the script, or it won't give me the keys. So this is a real nice security solution. But in the end, never use secret and scripts. I've seen a lot of scripts with secrets in the hash, not hash, all you want, and it's a mess. How to protect scripts. I received a call from a customer. Yes, I have a script I want to execute client side. I want, but due to security reasons, it is not allowed to change it, and the content has to be scrambled. Okay, really nice. First of all, you want to prevent the user to change the script. Then his colleague said, just make the script read only. Okay, good. If we copy paste the script, change it, and so on, it will execute. That's not a big deal. So please use code signing. What is code signing? It's a safety feature to control the script execution in combination with the execution policy. If you set your policy of your system to all signed and you sign your scripts and the certificate and the publisher is trusted, then it will run. Please keep in mind that malware is also signed, and sometimes with stolen certificates. So please keep in mind that always use your logic and don't trust any scripts from publishers you don't know. That's the first one. So you can sign your scripts. What do you need to sign your scripts? First of all, the guy who is making the script and signing should has a code signing certificate with the private key on his machine. And the client should trust the certificate authority of the code signing certificate and should have the execution policy all signed. If you don't set a policy, quite simple, then the signature will not be processed. The script will execute even if it's tampered with. You can sign your script, set authenticates signature, and the signing block, which is added, is on the right over here. And you can check your authenticate signature with check signing. That's quite simple, easy to do, and can be a quick win just to protect something. There are antivirus products which requires signed scripts. I'm thinking about the Deep Instinct. If your scripts are not signed, they are blocked from execution. So watch out. Security products often require signing of scripts. Then I want to obfuscate my scripts. I want to scramble them. Yes, it's really nice, but keep in mind that mainly malware scrambles also the code. So don't be confused. Watch out, scramble your scripts, but use two modules for it. We have invoke and revoke obfuscation. These are two frameworks which can be used to scramble your script and descramble your scripts, which is really nice. I've done an analysis on malware a few months ago, and the revoke obfuscation was really helpful to descramble the script. How does obfuscate code looks like? I have two examples. The first one is just a command line installation of PowerShell 7 with some parameters. If we scramble it, then you will get something like that. The commandlets will be transformed into aliases and everything will be encoded and so on. So it's not quite readable. Below a second example, there is a variable PowerShell is fun. Yes, it is. And if you transform or just change it with obfuscation, then you see this is the result. So it isn't readable anymore. So please keep in mind, if it's required, keep the original. You can go back. And if you see an event logs obfuscated code, please please investigate them. It could be malware. It's not the first time you're seeing strange things on systems, and then afterwards there's a cryptolocker or something else going on. That's about protecting your scripts a bit. Now logging. I received a call from a customer. There are strange things going on over here. Can you come by and just activate the logging and something? I think we are hacked or something like that. How can I log my output from my scripts? How can I construct scripts which are executed on service and so on? So I went to that customer and said, first of all, you want to log the output of your console. So I guess everyone knows the commandlet start transcript, which just puts the output of your script to a file. Let's enable this by default for every computer, every server in your domain by group policy, and we offload the logs to a location and then we scan them with a script. That was the first step. Then we see now on one computer that a script was executed 200 times a day, and it was a standard computer, so something was wrong. Then we enable Scriptblock Logging, which means that it will record the content of the script block and dump it into the event viewer, which is nice. But keep in mind, if you have large scripts, then your event viewer is quickly overwritten, so you have to make the log size large enough or just offload it to another solution, another tool. You can disable it by using a group policy, and then the result is that you will see in the event log, by example, that this is executed. There are possibilities and online articles. I've put one here below. And this gives you an idea how you can reconstruct a script from the event log to a PowerShell file. Just to reverse engineer if some individual has executed a script on your server and you don't have the source or you don't know the code. Are there questions about the security part at this moment?
We had a couple of comments in the chat, but I think not so much questions, but comments on some specific things like, for example, execution policy, which is not really a real security feature because it can be quickly overwritten and stuff like that.
Yes, it can be overwritten, but you can define it on machine level with a group policy. And you can block the user by changing it.
Yeah,
it's food for discussion. It's true.
So,
but
and if someone wants to comment, please feel free to open your mic. Before you get some problems with writing everything, please, no problem if you want to talk.
Yes,
you can do it. Okay.
This is Justin. Yeah, the things that I'm putting in the chat, they're more just sort of a side discussion. I didn't want to distract from Bruno's main points.
No problem. So I've seen there was some commenting about, okay, if you set the execution policy of your machine, then you can it will not prevent you from opening PowerShell and executing commands and so on. That's what you mean.
Well, I also mean, even if you set it at a computer level, there's plenty of ways around it where you can still
there's
execute
ways
unsigned
around
code.
it. Yeah. I'm just giving a few options to make it more secure. It's not the perfect way, but just giving some options. So there are ways around. In fact, there is one product which integrates with PowerShell, and that is Eventy, and that is able to hook into the PowerShell session and just to block some things, to give you an idea. So it's a multiple relation. So you have the security part. Let's say signing your script is one thing, but also preventing the execution of PowerShell or just some other things can be done on other levels. But it's not an out of the box option in PowerShell at this moment, as far as I know. Security is always interesting to discuss about. It's an annihilation. There are multiple factors and multiple things you have to keep in mind while securing things. First of all is the access to the machine. Second is the capability of the machine, and so on. And latest is the logging, what has been done on the machine if it has been tampered or compromised. Absolutely. Okay. Anyone having questions at this moment? Silent. Okay, good. Then a short conclusion. The 10 tips: testing scripts, use the preference variables, debugging, and console, set breakpoints, provide diagnostic info, functions, use parameter validation, avoid pipelines, use properties and methods if they are available, use hash tables for quick lookups, loops, evaluate loops case by case, identify and store your secrets in a vault, sign your scripts, obfuscate when required, enable transcription and Scriptblock Logging. So, if there are no more questions at this moment, let me have a look.
There's, I think, nothing in the chat at the moment.
Okay, I would like to thank you everyone for listening and just giving some feedback to me. It was really nice.
Well, I think it was very interesting. I think you covered a lot of the important things, and people are clapping. So I guess you hit the nail with the content.
Should be.
So that's really cool. So thanks a lot.
No problem. If you have questions, bruno@powershell.wtf, you can reach me and I will try to reply them as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I also put in the chat your LinkedIn profile link.
Yes, perfect.
So they can find you there as well.
Okay, good.
And so I think we are in time. Oh my God. That's cool. Very cool. So very interesting. So Bruno, thanks again. It was great.
No problem.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks a lot. Lots of great examples in there, and you also set off some good discussions on the side as well. So I think everybody benefits from that. So appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Yes. Is the deck available? Yes, I will forward you the slides, Heiko, the latest slides, and you can put them somewhere. It's no problem.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good topic. So talking about logistics. So the session is recorded. It will be uploaded to YouTube in the coming days, and I will put in some additional links and also to you and to Steve and also to your presentation, so people can watch it after the fact. That's definitely going to happen. And yeah, I think at the end it's just a little lookout. So next week is the global PowerShell and DevOps Summit. So I guess, Justin, you're probably going to be there, right?
That's correct. I have 2 presentations at PowerShell Summit. Okay. I'll be presenting on optimizing Visual Studio Code for PowerShell, the 2023 edition. So I have past videos that I have about that. I got a lot of stuff about all the neat new stuff that's come out in this year and all the improvements in the PowerShell extension. And I'll be doing another presentation on my task job module, which is a simple module that lets you take any .NET task and turn it into a PowerShell job. But it also, that particular part's not that complicated, but there will also be sort of a discussion about how you implement something in the PowerShell, how to implement the interfaces that exist in PowerShell and the public APIs. So that, that'll be a sort of a second half of that. Okay. That was one of the presentations that they chose. I'm like, okay, I'll present on that, I guess. But it's not, the presentation I realized is only probably about 10, 15 minutes. So I'd add a little more content to it. But yes, I will be there cool. All week.
All right.
So I hope to see any of you who are going there.
Yeah, I won't be there, but a script runner will be there remotely, so we will ship some posters over there. But then they're also going to be PSConf. We talked about it earlier in Prague. So Ryan, you're going to be there, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I plan to be there too. And as we saw earlier on, more people going to be there. I know. So I think it's going to be. And Ambrose as well, right? You said you're going to be there too.
I'm going to be there, and actually I'm going to be a first-time presenter.
Yeah.
Hey, congratulations.
Cool. Yeah. Excellent. And you're bringing your cat with you?
I bring my cat. No, she doesn't like to travel.
Okay. I understand that. Okay, cool. So I guess we will see a few people who are here in the session today in Prague. That's very cool.
Yep. I'll be there too. So.
Really? Awesome. Oh, cool. Excellent. Perfect. So that's
backpack through Copenhagen and Germany the week before and work my way down to Prague. So
right.
Sounds great.
Last year we backpacked all through the Czech Republic prior to going to the one in Vienna. So this time now we're going north and coming into.
So cool.
Looking forward to being there.
Yeah, that's going to be great. So looking forward to that.
We all got to hassle Jakob, and I have just the place that Jakob took me to when we were there in Prague last year that I'm going to try to get him to drag everybody to go to.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we have some appointment already. That's good. Excellent. Yeah, so I think we are at the end of this session. And so, by the way, Ryan and I, we plan to have the next meetup will be after the PSConf EU. We decided to wait and to come back with some news from there. So it will be probably July. And just stay tuned. If you're a member of our user group on the meetup already, you will get the info when we have the next session coming up. And we might have, maybe also to say this, a little sneak peek, we might have Doug with us. And so most probably one talk will be about ChatGPT and his PowerShell AI module. So, but stay tuned. We are planning for something in July. And until then, I would say, keep on scripting, and thanks everyone for joining. Thanks, Bruno, for presenting, and Steve, who's not here anymore, but still, thanks again. And yeah, see you soon. Take care, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.